Welcome, everybody, to another episode of E2KG. This is episode 34 for the GX show, the Gamer Experience Show. And this is when we get to talk about games that we've actually been playing. We don't sit with the meta discussions about the industry at large or the news of the day. We just actually get to dig into our hobby. So it's actually my favorite show, and it's pretty much our core flagship show. We're on episode 34, which is also quite surprising. It's amazing how fast the time seems to have gone. But we have a kind of a special night tonight because I have been faulty with my attendance. By the way, my name is Swiss Guard, and I'm here with so I'm going to be reporting on the selected game that my compatriots have chosen for me. So each GX show, one host will report in on a game, and then at the end of the show, we're going to pick a game. Tonight, I think it's going to be for DBQ Hams. DB, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing much more. I'm well rested compared to last week at this time. So no flooding in my basement, still in a state of chaos, but at least I've had a couple of nights sleep where I'm not staying up and shop vacuuming and hoping for the best. So yes, I am excited about this show too, and the fact that you are hosting it is always an exciting endeavor. But I think it will be fun. I'm really curious to hear your guys' experiences on each of these games. I've had a chance to pick up and play a little bit of both of these over the last month or so. So I'm interested in diving right in. So I'm going to kick it back over to you, Swiss, and see what Prime has been up to.
Right. That's why it's kind of a special episode. Usually we only have one person reporting in, but like I said, because of some scheduling conflicts, I'm going tonight, but it's actually really should be Prime's night to report in. And we'll get into his game in a minute, but Prime is with us, and I assume he's doing okay, even though he had some technical difficulties before we got in. It wouldn't be an E2KG episode if we didn't have to swap out a microphone or a headset. So,
yeah, I'm all discombobulated this episode. I got the wrong start time. My equipment's not working, but I'm good. I'm good. At least I got to play my game that I had to play for the last couple weeks. So,
true enough. For those of you that haven't been following along, it's E2KG. We're all working stiffs. We all have families, and the last couple of weeks and the last few months, we've been doing a lot of adulting, and so this has been a welcome catharsis for me, and I would say probably the same for Prime and DB.
Yes, that is very true. It is nice to have a little bit of fun in the midst of harsh reality sometimes.
All right, so I've got the agenda up, and like I said, we'll go ahead and report out. I'd like to start with Prime. So 2 weeks ago on the GX show, he gave us a few different games for the Xbox One. I think most of them were like Xbox 360 games that you can play on your Xbox One, and we chose the original Borderlands. So not Borderlands 2, but the OG Borderlands. And curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I had a 360 game, I had a Xbox One game, and a what I call the live game, which is kind of like the smaller indie games. But yeah, you guys picked Borderlands, which I was actually kind of happy about because that's the one I wanted to play. So yeah, I was actually pretty surprised when I jumped back in this game. I actually played it originally back on the PC, and I got maybe halfway through it, a third of the way or so. And I enjoyed it back then. I was playing a whole lot more games back when it first came out. But then I never got around to finishing it. And I actually did play Borderlands 2 on the 360 for a little bit. I just barely touched that game. So it was kind of nice to come back to Borderlands. There's been a lot of talk about it recently, just because supposedly there's Borderlands 3 coming out at some point within maybe a year or two. Who knows? But original Borderlands, to me at least, it still looked pretty good. I mean, they have the cel-shaded graphics, so it kind of ages pretty well, I would say. I don't know if you guys got a chance to play it or just look at it again through the Xbox. Well, I guess Swiss you can't on the Xbox, but PS4 maybe. But go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I've played it again on PC, and so it doesn't quite clean up nearly as well as Borderlands 2 does on modern hardware, which looks really crisp. But I think that graphical style that you talked about does kind of lend itself to, not quite in the same Wind Waker kind of cartoony way, but it's a little more timeless. So yeah, even on the PC, you can really crank the settings, and it holds its graphical, artistic design. Let's say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this on the news show last week that they had actually switched graphical style midway or at the beginning of development. So they were just going to do regular 3D models, but then decided to do the cell shade. So which, to me at least, it seemed to work out because that still looks good, plays well. I know DB, you kind of had a little bit. You think it's a little bit better gameplay on Borderlands 2, I believe.
Yeah, so when I had a chance to go back and putz at it, and this is where I was kind of curious, at least on the PC, it has, first-person shooter controls for that time period. What, 2007? 2008 probably?
I think 2008, yeah.
Right? Yeah, and so it's not everything has, this is still like Modern Warfare 4, Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 had just come out around that same time. So kind of that modern aim down sights, which buttons do which, hadn't quite all been standardized. And so there's a little bit wonky on the PC. It kind of shows its age there. But I would guess on 360, it probably plays pretty much just like any other shooter on 360 did.
Yeah, I mean, it plays pretty well. I didn't change the sensitivity settings or anything like that. So I mean, it plays pretty good when I'm aiming down sights and looking through a scope. So I guess the one thing that and I don't know if it's just the game from the times or maybe just kind of games in general. Actually, maybe this is kind of discussion we can have one day. But AI is kind of dumb. Like they kind of will hide every once in a while, but mostly, they're just kind of, sitting out there. Even if they're behind cover, they're just standing up. So it's like, and every once in a while they'll duck down. But I mean, they don't really do anything too drastic to try to save themselves. So, but I mean, I'm still fine having fun with it. Just think it's just all the guns you go through. I forgot what the number was on the first one, 1,000,000 or whatever it was that combination you could do. But it's kind of fun to go and kind of find that loot. It's a big rage these days, but you don't have to pay for it or do anything like that. So it just you just unlock them and you just find them in chests or you get them from the bosses and stuff like that. Now I got through just to the first boss, I believe, the first main boss, and I got through it pretty easily. He wasn't too hard. It was kind of funny because the boss comes out and those little, I forgot what they're called, but the little dog type things, and I actually killed the boss like almost pretty much right away and had more trouble with those dog things than the boss. So it was kind of weird. I don't know why that was. I think it was just the gun I had, I suppose, because different weapons do different damage. And, they have different ammo and stuff like that. So I got past him.
I was going to ask you how you commented that the AI was pretty dumb. And real quick, October 20th, 2009 was the release date of the original Borderlands. But I was curious how you felt about the challenge level. So if the AI is dumb, it seemed like, and maybe the boss being a single entity, is it just relying on basically hordes of enemies to overwhelm you to increase the challenge level, or?
So far, yeah. I mean, when you get to the first, I guess, settlement, if you want to call it that, there's probably like, I don't know, half a dozen guys, maybe 7 or 8. So it's just kind of a lot of guys they throw at you, and I was able to, as long as I stayed in cover, kind of popping in and out, I was able to take them out pretty quickly. But excuse me. But yeah, it's definitely more of at least right now, it's more of a kind of just throw guys at you and see what happens. But the difficulty's pretty. I can't remember. I don't think there was a difficulty level as far as I can remember. Yeah.
No, I don't think there is. Really,
yeah.
I mean, the way the difficulty is that different zones and different areas have different level caps and recommended levels. So you could grind and over level. I mean, this is where it really is that kind of Diablo-esque type of thing. The difficulty really becomes once you finish it the first time, if you go back through kind of the new game plus modes where they start really ramping it up and making more enemies and higher levels than you are.
Yeah, and I remember when I originally stopped, I remember I got to some boss. It was just this huge monster creature thing, and I had a really hard time getting past it. I don't think I even got past it. I think that's why I stopped. And I know it was you can do multiplayer on here and co-op, so that might have been at the time. I was just like I didn't really have anybody to play with, so it was what it is, I guess. But yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun, and I think I'm gonna keep playing it because I really enjoyed what I've been playing so far. So.
Do you recall the original time you played the game, what character class you were, and did you consciously or subconsciously choose a different class for the same class this time?
Oh yeah, good. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so originally on the PC, I picked the sniper character. I can't remember what his name is right now. He had his special weapon or special ability was like a hawk or something that comes in and starts hitting people. But this time around, I did consciously pick a different person, and I picked the heavy armor guy that throws out a turret. Excuse me, that throws out a turret.
Yeah,
with a special weapon.
That's a good class for a solo player, right? Because you got diversion, but also you can level up that turret to heal you as well. So
yeah, the weird thing was I didn't even use that thing on the boss. So I use it on those little dog things, but not on the boss itself. I was able to kill him pretty quickly, so it was good.
When I play Borderlands 2, that's the class I use. It's just nice to be able to like throw that in there and then go and hide for a second, and let it clear things out. So
I think there's a shield on it too, so you kind of duck behind it, I believe, or you might be able to upgrade it to that eventually. I think I did the same thing when I played Borderlands 2 on the 360. I picked the tank character basically, but yeah, I wanted to pick him again this time just because I had picked him the first time. But yeah, it's a lot of fun so far. Like I said, I like picking up the guns, and you can sell them off, which is nice. I mean, you don't get a whole lot from them, but still, you pick up a fair amount of guns, so you can get a pretty good amount of money. It's grindy, but it's not too grindy for me. I don't mind the grind too much, so I'm having a good time with it.
So you say you're going to stick with it. Do you think you're actually continue to play it, or will it be kind of a palate cleanse in between like Rocket League and PUBG and things?
No, that's hard to say. I mean, it'll probably be probably a cleansing thing just to do something different. I mean, PUBG's a shooter, I guess technically, but it's more of a third person. You can go first person, but it's mostly played in the third person. So yeah, I mean, it's just something a little different that I can jump into. So
now, did it get your juices flowing for Borderlands 3?
Yes and no. I'm really hoping Borderlands 3 doesn't go the way of paid loot boxes or hyper awesome weapon loot boxes that you have to buy to get the best stuff, because that's what I'm kind of afraid of. And even I think it's made by 2K, I believe, right? Is the publisher?
Yep. Yeah, it's 2K.
Yeah, and I know they had their big thing where they actually said, I think in one of the earnings calls or just one of the interviews, that they're trying to go in that direction. So hopefully this isn't the game that they start doing that, but most likely it's probably going to be. That's unfortunately, but we'll see. I mean, there's no announcement yet. I don't even think they even officially announced the game, as far as I know. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Did DB, you have any other questions for Prime about the game, or do you have any last thoughts, Prime?
Yeah, no.
No, like I said, I'm gonna keep playing it. So hopefully I can finish it off. If anybody wants to join me, you can, because I know it does get hard later on. So.
All right, then. So I guess we'll go ahead and move on to my report. I had God of War chosen for me. Like, this is the original God of War, and my original list was games, major franchises that I just missed for whatever reason. And we got the new God of War coming out, so I put that on the list, and it actually was the game that I least wanted to play, which it didn't surprise me that it ended up being the game that was selected for me, because I'm a glass half empty kind of guy. So
I tried, but then they overruled me.
But I will say that I'm glad that I played it, and there's enough there where the itch is there for me to continue somewhat, but I have a feeling it's going to fade away and be eclipsed by other games as we move forward, or as I move forward in my gameplay. But so yeah, I played it on the PS3, so I played the HD remaster of it, and I found the combat pretty satisfying. Now remember, God of War, this was originally a PS2 game. So I was kind of curious to see, and I know DB had mentioned it, how that felt, in 2018, and whether there was anything in my brain that would say, I hope they change this as, we move into God of War 4 or whatever. But I did find the combat pretty satisfying. I liked trying to get the combos. The game, it was challenging, but it felt like it was uneven in the way the difficulty scaled. So, they definitely go with just trying to throw a lot of enemies at you, and like the wave approach. And I had progressed pretty decently. I got through the first boss and kept moving on and got through some other sequences. There was one point where I got hit with, it was like sets of waves. You kind of end up in a room. They'll throw a bunch of enemies at you. You defeat the enemies, and usually there'll be some means by which you can replenish your magic or health. And I could only get my health replenished. And then I get into the next room, and there was a lot more enemies, and it required me to use basically magic, and it just wasn't having any of it. So if you die enough, the game actually does ask you, one, you get a trophy for sucking. I noticed that. And then two, the game asks if you want to lower the difficulty. I thought at the time it was temporary, and given that this is my plays game and not really in a rotation, I was like, well, I want to see more. I'll go ahead and lower the difficulty for now. So it bumped it down from normal literally to easy, and I started just ripping through the game like a hot knife through butter. It wasn't a challenge at all. So it was like, really, like, I went from struggling to being a quote unquote god just by that one change in the difficulty level. So I mean, that's not a huge criticism. Some of the things that I felt like I would hope that modern games shy away from. One, I think they will, and two, I already know is not happening. So the first thing that I think is an artifact of the era of the game is the levels feel very constrained. So you go through and you're in a room, you're in a corridor, and then you're in another room. You can't, there's the whole invisible walls. Back in the day, there could be like a chain link fence that was knee high and you couldn't get over it, even though you could leap above it. We have that here, which I didn't mind that from a perspective of, okay, it's just kind of a PS2 level beat 'em up almost game. But what frustrated me was the fact that the camera is fixed for each room. So like basically as you move through, the camera is following you, and when you're in this part of the room, the camera is at this location. And I would go around a corner, and I kept finding myself trying to flip the right stick to move the camera around so I could see what's going on, and it wouldn't move, and my character would just do his little roll dodge, and then the camera would finally catch up. And I found that problematic because there were frequent times when I knew that there were enemies in the room just out of vision of my camera, and I had to move my character rather than moving the camera around to get to where where I could see them and engage them without being blind. So that was frustrating.
Can I ask the alternative question about that, though? Because I'm thinking about PS2 eras and how much we had to babysit the camera, right? That every time, thinking about Kingdom Hearts, right? And you're continually spinning that camera, trying to find the right angle to see the people attacking you, and spin it again. We've done a better job with camera, or not we, but the industry has done a better job with third-person cameras, as Aglasicles has pointed out multiple times. How would it feel if you had to, in that kind of action beat 'em up type of style, if you had to be babysitting the camera to spin around on a consistent room by room basis?
I think it'd probably get frustrating if you're running around, and it just, I don't necessarily mind the fact that they had it on like a rail or whatever, it just felt like some of the rail was not well thought out, or it was just they obviously selected the best out of maybe they made the bet do with what they could. So it just for me it just was frustrating when I would get attacked when I didn't even know that there was an enemy left, or you're fighting the room and it's like you think it's cleared, and the gate doesn't open or whatever, and you're like what's going on, and you have to go backtrack until the camera switches, and then you're like, oh, here's a guy. But yeah, I can definitely see in the heat of like trying to do your combos and stuff, you're not going to be wanting to shift the camera around. So like I said, it's part of the era, and I kind of understand the limitation. For me, the bigger problem, and I have a feeling you may disagree with me that this is a problem, but I was surprised. Like I said, I've never played it, and I really hadn't even looked into the franchise all that much. I was surprised to find a bunch of quick time events, and it's not just bosses. You got quick time events littered through everything. All the enemies. There's a quick time event to dispatch your Minotaur men. There's a quick time event to dispatch your.
This was quick time events. The game. I mean, this
it's like
this
what?
was. It was praised for it, and not so much because of the QuickTime event, but in the moment it was praised because of the kind of cinematic way that it created those moments, right? And I think as the series went on, those QuickTime events became more and more a standard in the industry and became more and more tired as they went on. So, you were just
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think we were just talking about QuickTime events on another show, and I can't remember what game it was, but it was a more modern game.
Yeah, I don't remember right now offhand.
I know that PS4 Spider-Man is definitely going to have a lot of QuickTime events, and I see that, and it's like, yeah, I played
Tomb Raider, maybe.
Yes, the original, the remake.
Reboot? Yeah.
Yep, that had a lot of QuickTime events as well.
I guess for me, though, a QuickTime event does not make me feel like I'm all powerful. Yeah, there's a cinematic, oh, yeah, it's really cool how Kratos, grabbed the Hydra and pulled him over the spire on the crow's nest on the ship or whatever. But I don't feel like I'm in control with that. It feels like a shortcut to make Kratos look cooler, but it also breaks the immersion for me simultaneously. So I wonder if I'm in the minority of gamers with that. But that would, I mentioned this to my brother-in-law when we had dinner the other night, and he said, well, you're not going to like the other God of War games either. So I have a feeling God of War 4, if it's sticking with the franchise, will probably have them. I haven't really seen many videos of the gameplay yet, but
yeah, I mean, I know with like Tomb Raider, they had the quick time events in there, but they weren't that bad. Nothing as bad as God of War. They would happen every once in a while. Mostly, like that's how you get the gruesome deaths, because you had to like turn this way or turn that way, or whatever she was doing at the time. So. Yeah, I do remember in the original God of War, I did play the first one. Yeah, you had to do it for a lot, mostly for the enemies, like the bigger enemies and stuff like that. So I guess it was okay for the time. I guess that was kind of I don't know if it was a negative or just something that that they were doing back then, but it's just kind of weird, I guess, on the third person action game that they would do that.
It was not used very heavily at the time that God of War 1 came out. Even God of War 2. Right? I mean, QuickTime events, I think we trace it back to Shamu in Dreamcast, right? But even then in the PlayStation 2 era, which isn't too far, we're talking at that stage it's 5 years difference, maybe 4 years. So there's been others, but it really hadn't been done heavily, and so there was a uniqueness to it. There was a polish to that game at the time, and this is why I was really curious about this game, because for all the praise that it got at the time, and the intensity and the cinematic nature and the action combos, and I've even used it in talking about educational ways about how it did tutorials in a new way, right? That you were given the whole tutorial kind of way of throwing you into a level and stopping the action to pop up with a little bit of a tutorial piece was totally different from what was going on at the time, where you were thrown into like a training room for a tutorial. But again, how much of that holds up over time? Some of those things do better, and QuickTime events are one of those that has not been kind. I thought I've read that the God of War 4 is going to be thin on QuickTime events. They have not shown any. They have not touted them a lot. I think that they've also kind of, the big piece in the God of War 4 is its kind of seamless world where there's not going to be, the in-game cutscenes are all, the cutscenes are all in-game. It's just this big experience is what they're trying to create, I think.
So, that doesn't surprise me, on the heel, like with, Assassin's Creed and Horizon Zero Dawn and all these, big open world games. I thought that I got the impression that God of War 4 was kind of trending in that direction. But yeah, like I said, for the combat and, just having like kind of an old school action beat 'em up, I don't play those very often. It might keep my attention a little bit longer until something else comes along. But after playing it, I hadn't really thought about the tutorial, for example, as in the context of the time period. I knew that people appreciated the kind of visceral nature of the story for the time, but honestly, I did not come away thinking I had just played some sort of revolutionary touchstone in gaming history. So
I guess just one thing that I wanted to ask you, and something I didn't even mention on Borderlands, but what did you, since you never played it before, what did you think of the story and just kind of how it was playing out? Did it really draw you in, or is it more just about the action in the game?
It was more just about the action. It's not like I've gotten so far in where I can really see the character develop yet, but for the most part, Kratos is a dude that has flaming chainsword things, and that's about it. I guess the setting's kind of interesting, and having the Greek mythology, you have the Medusa type enemies and the Minotaurs and whatnot is kind of cool. But for Borderlands, I imagine that I enjoy the lore of Borderlands and the humor in it. So I imagine that you felt the same, or do you just kind of like grinding and loot gathering?
No, I like the different characters too, because they're weird and wacky, and I can't really remember, but I don't even know what like the overarching story is really. I guess you dropped on this planet, you're looking for the vault. I guess like you get this like.
That's pretty much it. That is it.
Cortana-like character that pops up every once in a while. I'm not even sure who she is. At least not yet. So I don't know if that.
You don't really find out until the next game. So in Borderlands 2, it ties that in a little bit. But no, you don't really. It is it is very much the hunt for the vault. Yeah. It's a first go of things. So
the ultimate loot, I guess.
All right, so I think we pretty much wrapped up our reports. We're about 30 minutes in the show, so this wasn't the only thing that we've been playing. And I know that DB has not had a chance to weigh in on any of his games yet, so I'm kind of messing with the order here in the agenda a bit, but I'd like to get some input from DB. You played a couple of major PS4 franchises the past couple of weeks.
I did play some PlayStation franchises. So last week I talked a little bit about playing Shadow of the Colossus, the remake, and played a little bit more of that. Got past, got over my mental hump of the story and just enjoyed the world. You know, it's a beautiful game. I mean, all the reports out when it came out 2 weeks ago, the reviews in terms of, I'm running it on a PS4 Pro, but on a 1080p, so I'm not getting the HDR effects, but it's running really crisp. I don't have that jagginess. Although I read a really interesting article on Kotaku, maybe week and a half ago, about how the change in the remaster kind of plays with the color palette, and so it's not as washed out, and it gives you don't have that same kind of isolated feel, kind of this kind of in-between world that the original did. This feels much more like a living planet, and so that it has a little bit of a difference. It feels much more of an alive place. The greens are green, not just kind of brown. But I sure appreciate the change in controls. Oh, that is a nice thing, right? It plays, it controls well. It's more responsive. I mean, it's still, Argo the horse is still a horse and doesn't really follow along very well. But it, what it has got me thinking about is vast openness. And the neat thing about Shadow of the Colossus is that, unlike Breath of the Wild, where I'm running into enemies here and there or trying to avoid them, because I'm not leveled for it yet, really I'm just exploring this world. There's not a whole lot else out there. It's more of a puzzle of trying to figure out how to get to the next Colossi and track that down, short of using online guides, and online videos, which at the original time were not necessarily even possible. So, I'm really enjoying the game. I think that I know that I'll keep plugging along with it and see it through. There's been the different nooks and crannies about the coins, 79 different coins in different locations. I'm not necessarily going to be tracking those down, but yeah, I really have been enjoying it. Again, if it's a game that you ever had an experience or an interest in playing, this is the most well-playing version of it. So I own it for PlayStation 3. It is my favorite PlayStation 2 era game in that generation. But this plays better than either one of those. So, Swiss, have you had a chance to play it anymore as well? You've played the original as well. So how do you, control-wise, the game is still the same game, but how do you feel the controls feel to a modern audience?
I don't know if my memory has failed me, but yes, I have. I did play. I fought a few more Colossi this past weekend. But I feel like the control. I just felt like I've put on an old glove when I was playing the game. I didn't notice much in the way of the difference in the control scheme. I thought it was pretty faithful to the original, but like I said, I don't. It's been a long time since I played the PS2 game as well. And when I say it was faithful to the original, I say that with both an endearing eye and cognizant of the warts. So when you're exploring, it feels like you said, Agro is very kind of, the camera wants to shift to get this cinematic look when you're riding the horse, and it just messes with me when I'm trying to steer the horse. I understand why it's doing that and everything, but it feels a little loose and mushy when you're just moving the character around. But it all comes together when you're fighting the Colossus. So, while the camera is a little bit obnoxious when you're exploring, you can move it if you have to and whatnot. But when you're fighting the Colossus, I appreciate the way you can lock the camera where it wanders between you and the Colossus. And I never have found myself. I guess one time I found myself where the camera got in an awkward angle, but for the most part, um, I'm focused on the experience of taking down this giant creature. And what I loved about the game is the simplicity. Like you said, it's just a puzzle finding the colossi and then actually taking it down. And I was surprised that there's well, I'm a little scared that there's like this stuff rattling around in my brain that remembered how um, to fight the colossi, because I get one and they're like, oh, he has armor on, you need to break the armor, and then like I just knew what to do, and it wasn't like a conscious thing. I just like, I'll go here and put, okay, yeah, and then I took the armor out and I was able to go on to him. So I guess that I'm glad I have that stored and not um, memories from my children or something. So
yeah, there's definitely some muscle memory there about oh, I gotta hide here until this colossi bends over so I can jump on, and yep, there's definitely those pieces.
But the experience too of when you like really start to move into the mode where you're going to be able to take him down, the music starts to swell up, and it's the wonderful orchestral track is still intact from the original game. I read that after you linked that article. I read the article, and I do just appreciate the beauty of the world now. But I can understand the loss of, I don't want to call it the surreal, but the fairy tale quality. I don't know if you guys watch many Studio Ghibli movies, but every movie that he makes almost has this like dreamlike state. It's a very I don't want to say odd, because odd has a negative connotation. It's a nice feeling, but he has like a weird way of just making you feel like you're in that between awake and asleep type like vision of the world and of the story. And Shadow of the Colossus, like, and all of the Japan studio games kind of had that, but this one that Blue Point made does seem a little bit more grounded. But for me, that hasn't really affected the experience much. I've always appreciated the soundtrack and just like the sweeping nature of the battle, more than the exploration in the game.
Are these the people that made was it Ico or Ico? I don't know how you pronounced it.
Yes, this is the original game. Is they made Ico,
right?
And then Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, you can kind of consider Shadow of the Colossus a spiritual prequel in a way. They're linked. You can kind of, if you want to read into it, they're linked, but they're pretty much practically they're two independent games. And then they just recently did The Last Guardian.
Yep, this is Ueda, right? This is his second game of the 3 that they've done so far.
I honestly, like, I've always enjoyed Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. I hope that Ico gets a little bit more recognition as we move forward too, but we'll see if they decide to remake it. I knew they did the remaster for the PS3. Let's see, we're about 37 minutes in, and Prime hasn't gotten to talk about much in beyond his report. So it looks like you played a few other games. You have the old standbys with your son.
Yes. So real quick at the beginning here, Rocket League and Minecraft to play with my son. That was actually on the Xbox One, and he just likes to play it. I have both on the Switch, but he likes to play it on the One just because he's got more. I got more for Minecraft. I have more skins and stuff like that. The mods, or not really mods, but the full conversion game add-ons. And then for Rocket League, he actually unlocked more vehicles and all the different skins and stuff like that. So he likes to play on there, so which is fine. I don't care. Whatever, we can play on either system. So, but yeah, we're actually playing on this past week and weekend, and I've been playing a little bit of both by myself. And actually, really because of him, I've started a little bit more on Minecraft now. I kind of go in waves, like where I'll just kind of not play it for weeks or months at a time, and then I just kind of get back into it. But it was because of him, because he's more of a creative player now. You can do creative or survival, If you don't know Minecraft, creatives, everything's open and you can just basically build what you want. So he's been doing that. He's been watching some YouTube videos, or actually not YouTube videos, but there's a channel on my Roku where they have a guy that plays through me. It's like, let's play. And he's been watching that guy, and he's been getting ideas. So he's just been going in there and just building some really cool buildings and stuff like that. Now, I don't know if he's like straight copied off of what this guy does, or he's just not that I've seen. So I think he's just kind of making the stuff up. But he's getting ideas, and I'm just kind of amazed. And he was only 7, so. But it's just amazing how I was like, man, this is like way better than I just have like a little square building, and he's doing all this intricate stuff and putting carpet down and multiple colors and all kinds of stuff. So it's really cool. He's got me inspired to go back in. But I like to play survival because, like I was telling him, he's like, why don't you like to play creative, Dad? It's because, well, like I said, in creative, everything's open, and it just doesn't feel like a game to me at that point. It's just like I don't want to I like to unlock stuff and do things like that. So I like to go into survival and explore and kind of, I guess, work for my things. So do all the mining and stuff like that. So I just find it a little bit more gamey in that sense. So I've been kind of jumping in more into that, and I've been getting ideas from him. So it's kind of works out. So yeah, so I've been having fun with both of those games. And then Rocket League is getting, I guess, a couple of DLCs coming up. They have a DC Comics universe kind of DLC. They're releasing a couple more Batmobiles. I think the one from I think it was an '89 Michael Keaton Batman, and then the Tumbler, I believe, from the Dark Knight Returns, and that series, that trilogy. So that's kind of cool.
And they're getting some WWE.
Yeah,
as well.
I just saw that one. Yeah,
What,
they haven't
what
showed
is
anything.
that? Okay,
I don't know. They
I
haven't
haven't
showed
seen
anything.
pictures
So.
either. Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's coming out sometime later in late spring or summer, maybe, the WWE stuff. I think the DC stuff's coming up pretty quick. But yeah, I just saw that and I was like, maybe just like a big, eyebrow for The Rock or something, or Stone Cold Skull. I don't know. It's a little weird. But
yeah, right. That's not the first thing that comes to mind of wrestling and vehicles. So.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe they'll all just be in their costumes or colors. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe sound. They kind of do a little bit of sound, too, with the cars. I know with, like, Batman, they have a Batmobile from, I think, Batman vs. Superman. And kind of like when you score the goal, there's kind of like a sound for the movie. So maybe they'll do something like that. Like,
some of their intro music or something.
Sayings or something. Yeah. Their stingers.
That's the neat thing about Rocket League, though. I mean, it really... You can add those things in to customize it without necessarily, it impacting the gameplay.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. The DLC itself, I'm assuming it's going to be paid. Most of it has been. They're fairly cheap, though. I think they're like maybe $3.99, $4.99, $5, something like that for the whole packs. Or at least they have been in the past. They've had, like I said, they had the Batman, they had the Back to the Future car, they've had Fast and the Furious, a couple different packs, so they're pretty decent. And then they go on sale after a few months. So I think I bought a couple on the Xbox version, I believe. I wish you can like buy it once and have it on everything, but unfortunately can't. So
someday,
yeah, maybe.
Someday. So you have a couple more games. I'd like to hit one more before we switch to DB, but in the vein of Minecraft, so. Your son, you said, likes to play creative. You like to play survival. Dragon Quest Builders kind of mashes the two in a way, and you've been playing that on the Switch as well. Did you just want to continue playing that, or has Minecraft detracted from your Dragon Quest Builders, or has it enhanced it since you've been playing it?
Actually, a little bit of detracting now. Minecraft has actually pulled me away again from that. I played that a little bit early in the week and last weekend, or the weekend before, and I didn't really touch it too much this week. Just a little bit at the beginning of the week, because I got back into Minecraft and all that. But I'm still having, because of the story has like an overall arching story. I do enjoy that game, so I want to keep going at it. And I actually got kind of stuck on a part. It got kind of hard. I want to say not really hard. I guess I didn't realize the enemies were gonna start doing certain things that they were doing. So I got to build up my base, my little home that I have, and kind of do some defenses. So I just got to go back and do that.
Ask what level you're on, or what chapter? Are you still on the first world?
Yeah, I'm still in the first world.
Okay, so
I
one of the
got
things,
like 4 characters, maybe 5 at the most.
one of the things that kind of hung me up on the game and soured me on it a little bit was your worlds don't stay consistent. Like you move to a different space and then you start fresh again. Where all the, I had felt really connected to, so I played this on the Vita. I felt really connected to that first, landmass and all the stuff I had invested in, the time I spent, building everything up. And then when it moved me to a different level, kind of a different chapter, it starts me, basically I go to another town to help them learn how to build again. So within the story, it makes sense, but you don't necessarily you're not able to carry over all the stuff that you've invested in. So it's almost like clean breaks as you progress through the story.
So you can't carry things, but you still have like whatever you unlocked, you can find right in the new world.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Yeah, you're not carrying over any of your things that you've built, but the things that you've unlocked and the skills you've learned continue.
Okay, I think that'll probably be okay for me because actually that's one of the things in Minecraft. Like I'll find a village in Minecraft and I'll like build defenses around it and do all kinds of stuff and make a couple buildings or whatever, and then I'm like, all right, I'm kind of done with this. I'm gonna move on to the next one because they always change. It's it's procedural generated, so that one might not be too bad for me once I hit that point. But I'm really enjoying it so far though.
I got some
cool
Final Fantasy VII vibes with some getting attached to certain characters and whatnot, and then having the game force you apart,
change you in.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's is that your segue here to talk about the game that I've been playing? So
it was an unintended segue, but I guess we'll go with it. I was just thinking,
just use it.
I was just thinking it would be a little bit frustrating to be emotionally invested. I've seen my son play it on the PS4, and we have not gotten that far. So that was a little bit of a surprise to hear that you invest in this town and everything, and then now it's kind of like you get uprooted. But then again, that's life. So, but yeah, we'll go with the Final Fantasy segue. And
sure, no, I don't want to take you guys off this if we want to keep talking about it, because I do think design-wise, it's an interesting choice, right? Rather than continue to kind of overbuild one space and allow you to kind of dominate that space, it forces you, like once you've mastered this area, it throws you into a different landscape with different materials and a different, layout, and you have to kind of reapply the things you've been learning. So from a design element, it makes it a more complicated and challenging game, but there's that emotional attachment piece that there's not necessarily the same through line. So, but my through line has taken me on a Final Fantasy journey. Yes, so Final Fantasy 15. So this is a game that I picked up on Xbox back when it released, and I talked about it a little bit on the podcast that we had at the time and how I kind of played it for a little while and bounced off of it, not really being able to designate and devote the time to it. So there's something, as we were talking last week, right, about kind of checklist games and games that feel like you're accomplishing something versus narrative-based games that kind of immerse you in a world and tell you a story. After all the mess that's been happening in my life with my basement flooding and everything else over the past month, I really wanted to escape to another world. And so here was Final Fantasy 15. I picked it up over the holiday for $10. So it's been sitting there relatively cheap. And next week, the Final Fantasy Royal Edition comes out, which is all the DLC and some new modes and other pieces. And so I thought this was a good time to kind of dive into the vanilla game and see if it's something that will hook me again. So now I am 11 hours in and into the game, and I'm also another 3 hours into its associated media. So there is a 5-part YouTube web series, animated anime series following the 4 main characters, which I've been watching as I'm running. And just last night, there was a scene in it that totally was reminiscent of something that happened in my game as I was playing, which was really kind of cool and connected me to that type of piece. There's a radio script that I had picked up back in the time when it released, which develops the characters. It takes place a day before the game starts. So I've been reading through that. And then I also, this past week, there was the sale on the PSN for the Final Fantasy Kingsglaive movie, which takes place kind of concurrently with the game. So I played the game up to the point where the Kingsglaive movie happens, and it gives you like a minute worth of like a montage of cutscenes, which, you know, no big spoilers here. Your father is killed. The king dies in a Final Fantasy game. And the prince, who you are, now has a new quest. You know, this is not a big reveal, but it really didn't do justice to the story, right? I found myself like I was engaged with the world and enjoying just kind of this road trip that the characters are on, and you kind of just do side quests and you're out kind of exploring, and the combat's pretty fun. I'm really enjoying that kind of mix. The action combat with a little bit of being able to mix up almost like a weapons triangle from Fire Emblem. And then this Kingsglaive movie happens, and the movie's kind of a narrative mess. But it totally was effective in terms of investing me in this world. That it went from being this tale of here's these, you know, friends off to go get their best friend hitched, to this invading kingdom has killed your father and taken over your homeland, and now you are the only heir that has the ability, you know, the connection to this ancient power now that your dad's dead, that has the chance to repel this imperial army, right? And so now it goes from this road trip to this resistance fight, and I'm suddenly a whole lot more engaged in the world after watching the movie. So I'm still doing side quests, which is kind of goofy. You know, your kingdom's in ruins and people think you're dead, but I'm tracking down frogs for this botanist, for this, you know, not a botanist because that would be, well, maybe. Anyhow, but it's side quests, right? But the story is actually pretty interesting. So I'm really enjoying it. It is well worth the, you know, I've already put 10 hours in for my $10. But I think the for people that may have bounced off it or that were kind of interested in it at the time, you know, with the Royal Edition coming out, which gives it cleans up a couple of the narrative messy parts later in the game. It adds in the DLC of some of the character missions, so you get a little bit more of the backstory of the people you're traveling with. So I think it does some good things in terms of adding more to the game to help you feel like it's explaining things to you rather than just kind of tossing you into this 10-year project that Final Fantasy 15 was. So that's that's my piece there. I'm definitely going to keep playing it, which is I haven't really been this invested in a Final Fantasy in a long time. So
that's kind of what I was going to ask. I almost picked up Final Fantasy 15 a week or two ago for my daughter. You know, she's into, like, you know, fairy tales and whatnot. So, and she's never really played a Final Fantasy game before. And I wasn't sure if this was the one. They claim that this is for, you know, new players and old alike. I ended up going with the Odin Sphere game for her because that's much more of a fairy tale-esque game and maybe a little bit of a simpler combat system, and she's been really enjoying that. But down the line, sounds like the story is engaging enough, because when you said that the story goes from this like lighthearted adventure to sounds like it gets ripped right back into RPG cliche land, that I was expecting you to say that it's made you less inclined to continue, but it sounds like it's been the opposite.
I think it's been the opposite because I watched the movie, right? So I had in 90 minutes, 2 hours of kind of world building that the game didn't necessarily give me. And so I think that really was effective. I think in terms of somebody jumping in without that, there's still I just spent the last 2 hours riding around on my chocobo and doing side quests, and so there's plenty of ways to engage with that world. It really is a big openness, at least in the early parts of the game. So it would be very accessible for people. I think the fairy tale aspect of it, not so much. I mean, I think Odin Sphere definitely. I'm curious at some point to have a parental conversation about the art style in kind of Vanillaware's games. But I think maybe Final Fantasy 12 feels a little bit more like that. It has that kind of monarchy and kingdom and fairy tale aspect more than 15 so far. But we'll see. We'll see if as the release schedule picks up, right? We're all kind of picking away at older things. So yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah, I know that since we're going to revisit this, we're running a little short on time. I'd like to talk a little bit more about Final Fantasy 15, but I know that Prime, if we can real quick get in the last game that you've been playing and talking about, outfits and whatnot, and we have
or lack of.
Yes, we have a game, newly released remaster on the Switch.
Yes, so I picked up Bayonetta 2, which came with the original Bayonetta download code. So I'm actually playing the first Bayonetta first because that's just the way I like to do things. And you know how I said Borderlands, I kind of didn't know, the story, what was going on. Well, in this game, no idea, no clue what's going on in this game. I know a few months ago when I was playing, what was it, Fate Extella, and I said that was the most anime game that I've ever played. Well, this is not an anime game or part of an anime, but this is like the most anime story ever because it's just like, I have no idea. There's like demons and there's angels and there's heaven and hell. And there's she's a witch, I guess. I'm not even sure. I don't know what she is. So, and I think I mentioned this kind of going back and forth in our chat during the week, last week and a half or so. But the game, I don't know what's going on in the story, but the gameplay is really fun, at least to me. This kind of like a Devil May Cry type of gameplay. You got your shooting, and she doesn't have any swords, at least not right now. But she has just her attacks, her melee attacks. So you can switch between one or the other. And I played a little bit of Devil May Cry back in the day, and I think the gunplay in that game is a little bit better. It seems a little weak, maybe, I guess is what I'm trying to think of. I guess I'm not really sure, but it just kind of seems a little off in Bayonetta. And maybe in 2 it's a little bit better, but the melee, it seems to be more melee heavy, at least that's how I've been playing it. I know you can do a couple different tricks right now, or at least I can do a couple different tricks. I don't know if you learn anything as you progress, but the gunplay is a little bit weaker than I thought it was going to be. But I'm having a lot of fun with the game. It's just fun. It's just play Rocket League, play Minecraft. It's kind of a little bit more. You got to think about it a little bit. But Bayonetta here, I'm just hacking and slashing, and you can do these not necessarily quick time events, but I guess kind of sort of. You can do like executions, I think they're called, or something like that, and there's just kind of, you hit the button and it kind of just does it for you. And it's just kind of cool to watch. So I'm having a lot of fun so far. So we'll see how it goes as I get deeper into it.
Cool. I guess. Do you have any questions for Prime about Bayonetta, or do you want to wait and see? Maybe for the next GX show and see how things progress, DB.
Yeah, so I guess my only question is that, are you finding it? How does it run on the Switch? So I had a chance to pick up and play a little bit of Bayonetta 2 this past weekend on the Switch as well, and it's buttery smooth, but it's still button mashy Bayonetta, and so I'm curious on one how that, how does that look 2, I think, looks beautiful on the Switch. It looks really nice, handheld mode. Are you playing it handheld or on the dock?
I played mostly handheld. Actually, just before we started the show, I was playing docked because I wanted to play something real quick, and that was kind of the perfect kind of game. And it looked fine. It looked great on my TV, so I didn't see any problems. And handheld, it looks fine. I don't see any like slowdown or anything like that. Like there's a ton of enemies on screen, so it's looking pretty good so far. And I know that first kind of action sequence too. You're kind of like on this like clock or piece of a clock, and you're like falling. There's all kind of things going on in the background, and the enemies and stuff. So it was running fine. It ran great.
I've been seeing pretty good reviews, I think, for both of them. I think GameSpot, excuse me, gave Bayonetta 2 like a 10. Basically called it like an essential and the definitive Bayonetta experience. So
yeah, they gave it a 10 back when it came out for the Wii U.
Oh, okay.
Everything is everybody's saying it was a great game when it came out, and now you can play it portably. And hopefully that means that it'll, Bayonetta 1 was what, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. That was 2010, 2009, somewhere around there.
I think they put it on the Wii U as well. And then Bayonetta 2 was Wii U exclusive, I think.
Yeah, so Bayonetta 2 came with a code for Bayonetta 1, but that was really the only way, unless you could purchase it on the eShop. So it's good. I mean, those action games like that, in some ways it's not a whole lot different than God of War in terms of its
right.
action combo based stuff, but for a game that's almost 10 years old, it certainly seems like it's holding up pretty well. So that's encouraging.
So I guess if that's, I think we're pretty much out of time for our GX show for this week. So before we go, we have to pick what DB will play, and he'll report again in 2 weeks around I guess it'd be the 13th of March, probably. GX show. And, DB, what can you share with us the 3 games that you've put up for nominated and the reasons behind your theme?
Yeah, so anybody that listening to this knows that I'm a big Destiny fan, and you can't talk about Destiny 2 right now without people telling pitching ideas about how to bring people back to the game, what to change. And after playing Final Fantasy 15 here for the past week and a half, and really kind of, there's a game that's added a lot over the course of time and kind of changed its game with the new Royal Edition that's coming out next week. So what I was thinking about was going back to some other games that have changed a lot since their initial release. So those 3 games are The Division. So Tom Clancy's The Division, Ubisoft, massive. A game came out, played 22 hours on my clock back when it first released, played the beta. We talked about it back on previous podcasts. And then just this past December, they came out with a big patch 1.8, which totally changed not only the end game, but a lot of balancing, add some new areas. And so it seems to have really reinvigorated The Division. And so that was one of the games that I was curious about going back to. Also, No Man's Sky. So this is the famous or infamous PlayStation 4 and PC game, right? That had the vast and infinite space. But it really wasn't until a year later when they added a story mode, did a number of other patches and created a whole different base game and built up the world to a much greater extent than what was originally released back in August of 2016. So again, another game there that's changed a lot. And the final game on the thing on the scroll that has changed a lot is Elder Scrolls Online. So Elder Scrolls Online, I played the beta back on PC, played it when it first launched on Xbox, and at that time it was very much in an MMO type of mindset. And about a little over a year ago, that they came out with a big patch that allows it to play much more like an Elder Scrolls game. So there are no longer, the enemies level with you as you go, so you could go anywhere in the world rather than zones based on your level. And so they've done a lot there to open it up and make it a little bit more like what an Elder Scrolls game is. So those are my 3 games that have changed a lot over time, and I'll stop talking and see what you guys are going to force me to play. So, Swiss, what game should I be playing next week?
Well, the whole saga kind of intrigued me from the outside of the hype and then the disappointment and then the rumors of an improved experience. So I have chosen No Man's Sky for you to play. And you said you did play that when it originally came out, or you have not touched it?
I have picked up a copy and have maybe played maybe an hour or so.
Okay.
So no.
All right, Prime.
How about you, Prime? What should I be playing?
Well, I also had picked No Man's Sky, but I didn't realize Elder Scrolls changed that much. But I'm going to stick with my choice, No Man's Sky. Yes, because the exploration, kind of in that same vein as like Minecraft and those kind of games, where you can just kind of do what you want to do. You can explore. I guess you can fight in the game too at some points and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm picking No Man's Sky also.
All right, it'll be interesting. That basically clinches it. It'll be interesting. I'm curious to see if Hello Games was able to salvage what was a pretty ugly release.
Was that for the PS4 you got it, or the PC?
I have it for the PS4, so
PS4.
I'll be playing it on PS4.
I will mention Agascles did share with me his selection. I bet you guys can guess what it is, by the way. If you had a venture guess, Prime.
I'm gonna say The Division.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
I think he's pretty predictable. As soon as I saw that, I was going to be like, that's what he's going to want. That's what we got. So
no, there's no resource mining, and you know how much he loves crafting. So.
Just fun play.
But he was outvoted. So No Man's Sky for 2 weeks.
Nice.
All right, I will get on that, gentlemen. Thank you, and thanks for hosting tonight, Swiss.
Yes.
Well, thanks, guys, for coming on, and that'll do it for tonight's episode of the GX Show. Please join us Thursday night for the E2KG and 30, our news show, where we kind of pick the most interesting news stories of the past week and chat about them a little bit. Anything that really needs to go into depth will probably be on next week's core show, where we kind of delve into topics in the wider gamer culture. So we kind of hit a lot of the news stories just to get you informed, and then we do the deep dives between each GX show. So I think that'll do it for tonight. Thank you very much. I'm Swissguard, and for Prime and DB, everybody have a pleasant evening. Good night.